Welcome to Office Hours, where we answer your tech and media production questions every day. Alexander Knight is our reader today. Alexander, what's our first question?
First question this morning is coming from Douglas Carmichael. Could live streaming be added to Bluesky, given its decentralized nature?
Jeffrey Powers, answer for us, please. Or at least start us.
Yeah, well, absolutely. Decentralization is basically pulling from another social network into Bluesky, and vice versa, depending on how the settings are set up on the program there. With that said, there is some live streaming on Bluesky happening. Some of it you're not seeing just yet. There's a lot of testing that's been going on that I've seen. If it's coming from Bluesky or if it's coming from one of the decentralization apps like Threads, I'm not exactly sure, but it's very possible.
Alexander Knight?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, yeah, they can add live streaming to it. The problem with Bluesky is that it's not truly decentralized. I mean, it's decentralized in the sense that it supports the AT protocol and you can communicate across servers, which gives you more flexibility and less lock-in like closed platforms like X, for example. However, it's still not, when you compare it to a federated system like Mastodon, there's still no interoperability between those two major services. And that's what a lot of people are asking for. Now, they've made some promises. They haven't given timelines. The thing that really prevents me from using it is really that if I want something that's truly going to be interoperable and cross-platform and to be able to communicate with people on both platforms. That for me is really a big deal. And then of course also having my actual community there also, because what's the point of live streaming if people aren't there to actually see it? So once they implement it, it'd be good to see how that is going to work. But these two platforms also have very, very small user bases. So I'm hesitant to put time and effort into it, especially with no monetization strategy. I would much rather pay somebody to support their service and the work that they're doing, as opposed to this, well, everything's up in the air. We'll try to figure out a way to make money later. And I've been burned so many times by social media services. The list goes on and on of ones that had a great start and made a lot of promises and ended up shutting down.
Alex Lindsay, you wanted to hop in?
It's a lot of work for nobody watching. It'll be, the problem with Bluesky is that, when you post something, it's hard enough to post something and have, 4 people see it. but it's another problem. That's the chicken or egg thing with social media. But I just don't feel like there's any, there's not any. And again, when Twitter started, I guess we were all tweeting to each other. There's like 10 of us that were doing this, or 100 of us that were doing it. But I think that Bluesky is going to have a hard time getting off the ground. I know that people are upset with Musk and people are upset with things, but upset is not enough to get them to the masses to jump off a platform where they already have a following, and so that's the real challenge. And so I think that. I think that's them adding that infrastructure. And I will say adding streaming infrastructure, unless you're willing to pay a lot of money, adding streaming infrastructure is not trivial. Like making a stream that could potentially work for a lot of people is not trivial. I think X, after they took over from Twitter, has made a huge investment in video. Obviously, they have a CEO that believes in video. The video looks way better than it did before. But for a long time, it really felt like it was held together with paper clips. Like it was just the manifests were a mess. What they were telling you wasn't actually happening. It was just, and that was for years because they had MOBAN before that for all the major stuff. And then everybody else was just playing around with their internal version that they got when they bought what was the company they bought? But they never really changed that. So that took years for them to get to a point where it was useful. And so I think that, it's not trivial to do this. And so I think Bluesky would have to spend a lot of money to build the infrastructure, because it's not just I can have it in code and I can buy some servers. You need peering agreements. You need all the other things that are required, or you're going to need to set it on top of Azure or AWS or something to do it for you. And all that's going to cost a lot of money. And people who aren't paying, that if they get a big stream, it's not these streams aren't free. So I mean, and so
power costs money.
It turns out moving bits cost money, and so if someone gets onto Bluesky and suddenly had a million whatever, that would be like all the revenue they had that month. So that's the challenge. I don't think that I just don't see it coming in probably anytime soon. They're just lucky to be there right now.
Thank you for the question, Douglas. Let's go to our next question.
Alex 40 Golner in Zone 2, Northwest London. If you were the VC company that bought Avid, what is the cost-benefit analysis of keeping Media Composer? What new owner would be able to make it a wider success?
Alexander Knight, you want to dive in on this first? Go for it.
I can't speak to what owner would make it a wider success. However, I will say that if you just look at the sheer number of amateur, semi-pro, and professional musicians that are working on production in their own home studios, there is a much larger user base for Pro Tools. Now, without knowing their actual revenue streams as far as how much these two products make, I can definitely say that Pro Tools makes a lot more money for Avid than Media Composer, and they both have perpetual and subscription services, so they have recurring revenue. But I think it would be disastrous for them to just flat out stop making Media Composer. As clunky and horrible looking as that application is, I think they're stuck with it for a greater while. Now, I think there's still room to improve. I think it's important that if they want to keep that the number one application that is being used in film, that they talk to their user base and look at improving it. I think making massive changes to a program that is, has become muscle memory for people, I think making sweeping GUI changes to a program like that is really, really dangerous. You look at companies like Microsoft, anytime they make major interface changes, this is why they keep supporting legacy stuff, is because it really hurts the people that are using it, and they don't really like change. So I don't know what they would do to make it more successful. All I know is just getting rid of Media Composer would probably not be great for them. But hey, there's a lot of great competition right now. I'm sure a lot of people would love to move to DaVinci Resolve full time.
Scott M. Davis, what say you?
So there is a titanic install base for Avid out there in the professional space. I don't see it going away anytime soon. I don't think any VC company is going to make it better. VC companies, and we had a brief chat about this beforehand, they're very interested in what's my revenue look like this quarter, right now. So that's what's going to drive it. Whatever the large enterprise level guys are asking for is going to drive whatever they're going to do, and those are the features you're going to see. So expect to see whatever is important right now to drive the feature development. And that's going to be things like, hey, how do I bring AI to make things go faster? How do I bring AI into this to make things easier for me to do the stuff I did by rote memory in the past, and make it easier for me to onboard content? How to make it easier for me to do all those things that I did by muscle memory in the past, that I don't have to learn how to do them in the future when I bring a new guy on. So those are the things you're going to see.
Alex Lindsay.
Yeah, I mean, Avid, if you think about we've talked about this before, but if you think about the pyramid that is our business, Avid has this area here, and they are going to hang on to it. And they probably don't have to move very much around to hang on to it. But they're going to, this is all they got. They're not going to get any more than that. Like there's no room below them for them to expand into that market. There is nothing that they can do between Premiere, which has got some legs in Hollywood, Resolve, which has got 10 times more programmers than everyone else. Probably twice everyone else all combined. So Resolve is this giant machine that is just churning with features and scale and so on and so forth. Then you have Final Cut that Apple has that is constantly adding. I think they're still adding more features. I think what's under the hood is more features towards the stuff for Apple Vision Pro. We're seeing some updates to other things, but that seems to be some AI sprinkled in here and there. But it's got a solid base. But between those three, I don't see how. I just don't see how Avid goes anywhere other than it hangs onto that top until most likely Resolve pushes it out. I think that's I think I don't think Resolve is enough. It doesn't work enough like Avid for Avid editors to use, but I think that Avid editors are a certain age. There's not a lot of young ones coming in there's just a shelf life. And so I don't know why a VC firm would buy that company other than for Pro Tools. But Avid, Avid on its own is a solid income for what it is, but it's not going to get any bigger. It's eventually going to get, its users will retire and be replaced by most likely either Premiere or Resolve users.
Jeffrey Powers.
It also depends on what the VC is. There are certain VCs that collect companies so they can build their portfolio. There are certain VCs that they do like the Carl Icahn approach. They buy something, they figure out what's going to work out of that, they strip out what works, and they sell that part. So a lot of that could be happening. I don't know about STG Group, but I looked at their portfolio really quick, and they have a pretty eclectic group of companies from there. So my guess is what happened was there was another company that couldn't buy Avid that said, hey, we really like these ideas. They went to the VC. The VC is investing in that to see how they can build it up and then possibly even resell the product from there. But we'll wait and see how they interact with Avid inside of here.
Don't forget, we are driven by your questions, and you can ask questions, chat about the questions, and vote on them in Mukana, our live Q&A system. You go to officehours.global/join. We'll send you an email within a day or two, and once you've done that, you can ask, vote on, and discuss the show's questions in the community that kind of surrounds us every day in real time. That's officehours.global/join. Let's head off to our next question.
Sorry, I had the wrong screen there. Jeff Veely in Henderson, Texas. This company was acquired by Logitech and products are no longer being made. What's the best way to make these last, given that batteries will eventually go bad?
And Alexander Knight, you want to turn around and give us a thought?
I had a look at the back of that, so I can see 4 screws. So what I would probably do is just open the back panel and take a look. It's probably some kind of LiPo battery in there. So it's just a matter of determining what type of battery it takes and what the format is, and you should be able to get an off-the-shelf replacement for it.
Jeffrey Powers.
Yeah, I totally agree. I worked with Litra while they were around. Last time I saw them was 2018 at Cinegear. But yeah, these are light. There's 3 different versions of the lights. They have the little cube one. They have this one, which was a 3200 to 6000 Kelvin, I believe. And then they came up with a color version of that. But as Alexander said, there are screws in the back. You just basically take them out. You pop off this plate. Batteries, I did a quick search for battery replacements. There's several different companies, generic versions of this, so it's a very standard battery. For this one, I'm not exactly sure. I haven't really looked too far on that. So you should be able to change it. But the bigger problem is the USB on here is the micro USB connector. And I'm finding day after day that when I find something like this, it's harder and harder to find the USB cable because I'm throwing them out and going to USB-C. So that's going to be a big issue in the future. And the reality is Logitech did not dissolve the company. They're just making newer versions of the lights. And you can see they do have a Litra by Logitech light that you can definitely get. They're just newer, and they've come with little diffusers on them and more stands, and they're more consumer friendly.
Next question.
This one's from Craig Kodoki in Toronto, Canada. After a couple of months since the M4 Mini was released, what are the current users' thoughts about the base unit? Any issues or limitations yet?
I'm not a current user, but I pay attention on the boards, and from everything that I have read from everybody who has said it, they're just astonished at how solid and fast that unit is. It's being put into service for so many different kinds of things, and everybody I talk to say that the M4s are just blazingly fast and pretty darn stable. Alex, I think you have a bunch of them. What are your thoughts?
I have one right now. I'm looking at getting a bunch of them. I'm testing the base unit. I received a HLS of 120 frame per second stream, delivered it to 120 frame per second output, and it was running at about 3 to 4% capacity. 3 to 4% of the M4 was running. I then did a play out of 120 out of OBS. OBS is one of the few apps that will play 120 frames live out of it. That took it all the way up to 6%. So it was, and So I think that from the way I'm using them or the way I'm testing them, they are incredible. Like these are the most fascinating machines I've had for the price in a long time. For $599, that's the one I'm testing because I need to buy possibly hundreds of them, and so I'm trying to keep it down to just what is this as an edge node, specifically a $600 media edge node, which is what I'm thinking of them as. Man, I don't think there's anything else at the price. I don't think there's anything at twice the price that does what these little boxes do.
What if the phrase dropped frames is going to disappear from language as we get these processors so fast and so capable? It's amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible.
Alexander Knight, your thoughts?
I have to agree with all of that. It's really interesting because I watch Linus Tech Tips, which is primarily a PC-focused channel, but even they were really impressed with the M4. They did a great video and compared it to two other PCs, a Minis Forum PC and some other desktop computer with like a full-sized NVIDIA graphics card. It's very impressive and stacks up really well against the competition. The one thing that continues to frustrate me, and they mentioned this in the review, is I really hate how much Apple charges you for extra RAM and storage. So Linus Tech Tips recommends it against you upgrading the internal storage because of the cost. The challenge is that the internal storage is so much faster than a lot of external drives. You can get closer now because now they have you can get Thunderbolt 5 on the M4s. I can't remember. You might have to go to the M4 Pro processor, but there are Thunderbolt 5 drives slowly trickling out. So if you need to do something really critical that requires that kind of bandwidth, you may need to go to that type of drive. But as a base unit, I've got an M4 with 16 gigs of RAM. I went to the 512 gig internal storage, and I'm running Mimo Live on it, and I'm streaming at 4K with multiple video sources coming in over Zoom, and it really doesn't use that much memory or processor. So far, it's very impressive.
Jeffrey
Sequoia
Powers
is not ready, though.
Excuse me, Alexander. I stepped on you there. Jeffrey Powers.
Yeah, I actually cried once, so I stepped up to the Pro, and the Pro is the one that does have the Thunderbolt 5 to it. This is the one thing that I really like about that, and it's this little guy right here. Well, I took it to CES with me, and basically I run a two-computer system. The M4 sits in the hotel room, whereas I take my little my MacBook Air with me. I can remote in via remote desktop to do any type of editing or anything like that, and then I can let it sit there and just churn away while I'm working on something else on the Air. It's a great little 1-2 combination, but then the size of it just fits right into my backpack, which is great. Same thing with the base model right there. I was slated to actually return my M1 because that is a base unit, but I decided to keep it because it's still so powerful for what I need, and I'm going to be putting that in the music room. So even though if you don't get the M4 base unit, you just drop down to the previous M2, that you're still going to get more than enough power to do a lot of things. Of course, if you're doing anything like, for instance, doing any type of multi-channel music or anything like that, that's doing a lot of editing a lot of plugins, you'll definitely want to think about bumping that up because you run a little bit of I believe there is a big difference. I did do one thing, and that is right now everything that I use with my Taja AI. I'm sorry, not Taja, but AI. My AI. Topaz AI. Excuse me. Topaz AI, I did a test between the M4 and my computer, which has a 4080 card in it, and it's pretty comparable in the render and the same video. So I'm really happy to use this to do a lot of things as I use other computers to work on.
Next question.
David Arsenault in Bonaventure, Quebec is asking, I have a hockey tournament taking place in 2 different arenas. Considering that I already have 2 ATEMs, what do I need to control both of them from one location?
Alex, can you help them out?
Well, the good news is that you can control those ATEMs as long as you have their IPs. You can control them from anywhere. I'm assuming you're not trying to get them to both do the same thing at the same time, which is not impossible, but more difficult. But if you're just trying to be able to control them from one location, you just need to have their two different IPs. Now, typically, you can even tie. We've had an actual ATEM panel tied to an ATEM switcher that is 2,000 miles away. It was just a matter of building up a VPN and having them just saying, "What is my IP?" And so I was able to run the ATEM in the office from my house. So those are all things that are very doable. So these are all just IP driven. You either have the software, but if you have a controller, it's just a function of getting them both on the same subnet, making sure that they're if they're not in the same building, then you would get them, or in the same. You need to build some kind of VPN that's going to get them connected to each other. There's some port forwarding things that could be done as well. So there's but the key is you get them both on the same IPs. They sit there, and you now can switch back and forth, or have two panels, or have two computers, or one computer. You can open, if you copy an instance of the ATEM software, you can connect them to two different switchers on the same computer. I do not recommend that, but it is possible. So those are all things, but it's just the software tying into an IP. We've done things like we have our graphics team. We've had ones where the switcher is on site. The graphics team's offsite, and all the new, like we were doing a bunch of corporate stuff, and so the speakers are changing every hour. When the speakers change, the offsite graphics teams changed all the lower thirds in graphics for the next hour, but they were sitting 40 miles away, where there's a bunch of advantages to not having people on site. And they were able to make those changes as needed. So those are some possibilities, but it's just IPs. It's easy to control from a distance.
David, thank you for your question from up in Canada. Next question.
Alex 4D Golner in Zone 2, Northwest London. Apple seems to have gone cold on consumer video editing applications such as iMovie and Clips for iOS and iMovie for Mac. Why do you think this is?
Scott M. Davis is going to start us off here. Scott?
So I'm gonna talk less as a video guy, as more as a dad. I've got a 17-year-old who loves to go out and take videos of trains and all that sorts of things. He goes out and drives all over the place and does that. And every time I look at how he's editing it on his iPhone, it's a different app. In the last 6 weeks, he's had 11 different apps. None of them have had an I in front of them. He's just constantly doing. And this is not a tech whiz. This is not a kid who's like anything like what we do. He does not care about like quality of editing, like feature set and that sort of thing. He's just downloading everything from anywhere. He goes, "Oh, today I'm just going to use this." Apple's up against it with the fact that everything out there can be done by anyone, and people are just generating tools all over the place. So I think it might be just a question of why would we bother? This is sitting in the chair of a dad looking over the shoulder of a 17-year-old kid. In my world, honestly, professionally, Apple doesn't show up a lot in my world. Like the conversation we were having earlier on about Avid, Alex, none of the tools that I see have an Apple logo on them. They're all labeled by somebody else. In that world, they don't exist. That world is really owned by other people. In this world, it seems to be like all these free to use things. Everybody's building one. It just doesn't seem like Apple needs to be developing something for their users because everyone's got one.
And Alex,
I think to Scott's point, one of the challenges is that Apple has a high degree of self-correction. They want to make everything just clean and perfect and have everything flow out. And a lot of these apps are moving so fast. So if you look at CapCut, which is probably I wouldn't put this on my phone, by the way. On my main phone is CapCut because it asks for, I would like to take all your privacy. It's you just remember that it's owned by ByteDance, but it is the best editing app out there on the mobile devices. It's got all the tools built in. It's got everything that a user may want to put together a really compelling thing. I think that everyone's trying to compete with that or thought about competing with that, but they're moving so fast that it's very hard to go down. I think Clips was interesting when it came out, when the water wasn't moving very fast. Clips looked really interesting. I think iMovie's a little old in the tooth. I have to admit, even I don't recommend iMovie. Like if someone wants to do something, I'm like, you should just learn Final Cut. Like iMovie, I find to be fairly frustrating to use. And when it first came out, I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. But the way that the interface works, I find to be incredibly frustrating. So I don't recommend iMovie for anybody to use for their editing. And so Final Cut is usually I'm usually like, that's a good one to start knocking stuff out. Although at this point, because Resolve is free, if I feel like the person's technical and is going to go somewhere, I often say, well, you might want to look at Resolve just because it's free. Like it's a free app, and when you get good at it, you can get better at it. And they're trying to make it better for the social folks, but the problem is that app is so heavy and big that you really have to be committed to it. So if you're not committed to really heavy editing, I think that CapCut has really taken a lot of, and there's other ones like Video Star, and there's other, there's a lot, as Scott said, there's lots of editing tools, and a lot of the creators that we've talked to recently switch tools based on what kind of video they're doing. I'm doing this kind of video, I'm going to use this app. This kind of video, I'm going to use this app. I'm going to use, and they swap over because they have features that they like on that other one, right? And so I think that that's the challenge. That is that they're just like we use different tools for different things. They're using different tools, except they're the entire editing package, and they're just moving from one to the other. And so I think that's been hard for Apple to navigate. And they either have to put, and I think the hard part is Apple doesn't have a huge team working on these things. And so they either have to say, we want to win this, and they're going to put, 80 engineers on it and hire a bunch of folks that are under 20 to, to tell them what the interface should look like, find out how young can we hire them so that they can do lots of focus groups and figure it out. They either have to decide they want to win, or they have to drop out. And I think that they've decided in these cases possibly to drop out.
Yeah, it's really interesting to me because when I learned editing, it was something that you had to spend a lot of money to do, and it was rare, and only people who wanted to study it became editors. Now, literally everyone with an iPhone seems to be editing. So with the landscape of people who are interested in tools for cutting together and posting social and other streaming content, it just changed. Everything has changed. So, I'm seeing the same thing you are. Alex, you want to come back in?
The one thing I will say, and I don't know what's happened at Apple related to these tabs, but I know that this is one of those things where somebody is holding something up, like somebody's making sure something keeps on happening. And when they leave, if that creates a vacuum for too long, that whatever that is just disappears. The person who managed iMovie for at least a decade, if not more, left over return to work. This is kind of like when we talk about return to work, left because they didn't want to come back, and then I haven't seen anything happen after that. Like it was and everything just kind of, and so I don't know if that's related to it or not. But I think when companies think about the return to work policies, this is something that they should, there's key people that may decide they don't want to come back. And when they don't come back, they're the ones that were kind of the flag bearer of that app or that feature or that system. And when they leave, it's much harder. You think, oh, I can just put somebody else in. Often not. so I think that's like you think that people are just replaceable, but at a certain level, not so much. so the problem is you're still in a moving train, and you now put a new engineer in that doesn't know anything about the train and where it is, and don't pull this lever because that'll make the train stop. And so I think that's that challenge with a lot of these things is and I think that's going to be it'll be interesting to see what happens with these two apps, but there may be a wonderful 18-minute documentary about this somewhere in the future, the rise and fall of iMovie, and it'll all end with they did return to work, the product manager left, and then here we are. So,
Scott M. Davis, you wanted to get it back in on this?
I want to drop in. I want to grab onto something Alex just said. There are other companies that are very large that are doing similar products. And I know that they're getting ready to release them, but there are feature sets that are being held up because some other part of development has not come along as quickly as they'd like, and release cycles are slowing down. You think AI will speed things up, but sometimes when AI features don't come along as quick as you'd like, it slows out some other release cycles. So something that somebody wants to have ready to go in January wasn't ready in January. That means that new feature isn't ready. So that holds up the release of that next piece of software. I kind of sometimes wonder if Apple, with their foray into Apple Intelligence, has some ideas that they want to do with iMovie and that sort of thing. Something isn't ready to go yet. That's holding up the next release of this thing. I know for other companies that is very true. So they may be stuck in the same thing. So Alex, your comment about, hey, maybe that person has returned to work. There are other whole series of functions that could be hitting them right now as well. I know a lot of people who really love iMovie, and they are desperate for it to come back in some way, shape, or form to catch up to what other things are able to do. Some of the features they want aren't there. Some of the tools they'd like just as sitting on their phone and playing around, they're expecting that to come. I kind of wait and see. But remember, Apple ultimately is a hardware company. If they can find a way to sell hardware out of whatever tools they develop, they'll do it, and it'll be great.
If you have questions that you want to put into the show queue, we talked about the Mukan interface before, but you can also type in askofficehours.global into your web browser. That's askofficehours.global. Or if you're watching the show, you can use the QR code that I am about to launch up onto the screen. If you take a picture of that, it will do the same thing. Did it go up? Yeah, hope so. Oh, wait a second. No, it didn't. That's because I had the media player targeted the wrong thing, and that was my fault. I apologize. There we go. There's your QR code, hopefully, coming up into the corner of the screen. Excellent. Take a picture of that with your phone or an iPad or whatever you have around, and that will scan and get you directly into askofficehours.global. And it's a quicker system. It goes directly in. Somebody in the back end will look things over, make sure it's show ready, concise, well-formed, and try to ask only one question at a time. So if you get that done, you can just use askofficehours.global to submit your questions. Next question.
This one's from the QR code. Kent Kowalski in Madison, Ohio is asking, is there an easy way to create a back channel to just talk with your host using vMix and Zoom together? I have a Go XLR as my audio device. Thanks.
Alex, could you figure this out for him?
We use Unity. so that's how we, as a subsite, Mickey McAchore said that he said it depends. Where is your host? What are they monitoring? How are they monitoring it? And then Mickey said I would use a production intercom system for production communications. Yeah. So there are tools, and we're testing some new tools that have it built into the system. But TalkBack is something that is very valuable. The way that we've done it in the past inside of Zoom is a pretty complicated, process where every person was in their own Zoom room or their own system, their own computer system, and we're feeding it back. So they jump into a Zoom, but we bring them in. Every PC has a different person, and we then are able to send audio back to them, or they bring them into a Zoom room and we put the audio back to them there. It's very complicated. And it was a lot of hardware for us to do that. But it gave us TalkBack. We could just push a button on a ClearComm box and talk into their ear. And that was very, very valuable. But nowadays, most of the time, if we really want TalkBack for a show, we typically have people use Unity because they can just open it on a Mac or PC. We send them a login, and that's what we're using for the show. So it's a little bit more work. But if you have a host that you're working with all the time, it's not you to have them do that, and then you just got to make sure they have in-ears. They can't have open speakers.
Next question.
David Brady in New York is asking from the QR code, if Alex is on, can he explain how he set up and uses ChatGPT on his phone in a conversational mode?
Do you want to dive in, Alex?
Yeah, let me make sure I have my screen sharing on. Let's see here. So if this is always dangerous to do screen sharing on a broadcast, so we'll see how this goes. So anyway, here's my interface. You'll see I have the ChatGPT app. I just click on the ChatGPT app and I say, let's see, hit that button there, and I'll say, how much could a woodchuck chuck if a woodchuck could chuck wood?
And now some server somewhere in the world is trying to figure out how to answer that.
How to be politically correct to say that's a bad idea. I don't know. Maybe it's stuck.
It's confabulating something.
Usually it happens immediately. But
The pulsing ball of delay.
I had problems this morning with ChatGPT. So
yeah, maybe it's.
We've burned all the GPUs, Alex.
Yeah. What's the weather like typically in Zimbabwe? Oh, it's frozen. It's frozen. So
there you go. Successful screen share, not a successful interaction with the AI, but there you are. Welcome to the modern world.
Oh, it said it came back to text. It just didn't say anything out there. It said it'd be politically correct to say that's a bad idea. Anyway, so I guess. Oh, it said it. No, it said if a woodchuck could chuck wood, it might chuck 700 pounds of wood. So it did come back. So for some reason it didn't speak it. There's a bunch of reasons for that. It could be that it grabbed onto one of my other headsets or something and just said it, and we didn't see it because you get the text of everything that you're there. So typically, what happens is if I'm thinking about something, I have it in my car and I literally just turn it on and I start talking to it about ideas. And sometimes it like I'm just like, well, what about this? And how many of this? And what does this look like? And I kind of, just sitting there just chatting on it, and it works pretty well. I'm not trying to check to see if it's accurate or not. I'm just thinking about something. I'm brainstorming, and I find that driving and brainstorming with ChatGPT is a pretty useful thing. Like I can formulate a bunch of ideas that I then come back and Google.
I was today years old when I learned that ChatGPT uses weasel words. That's what we used to call them in marketing speak when you use something like, it might be 500 pounds. I'm not going on the record.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's a maybe. Interesting experiment. Next question.
Zach Stelsmith in Chicago, New York. I'm experimenting with vMix 28. I cannot select the buses to send audio to, only send audio straight to the master. Any ideas why this workflow is not working?
Not off the top of my head. I will say that we have an incredible audio panel that comes every Wednesday. So if this question persists for you, take a look at next Wednesday, because those guys are really amazing with any kind of audio and vMix and that kind of thing. But Alex, did you have a thought?
No, I'm simply raising my hand to tap dance and talk to you while we wait to see if anybody that's watching the show in the chat has any ideas about why this could be the case. And also maybe take a look at who's on Friday and see if there's any. We'll see if we can keep. And I guess Chris Sabato asked. He uses vMix a lot. He's on our chat. He said, "Are the buses enabled?" So make sure that those buses are enabled. So that's the one tip we have so far. But if you keep on having trouble with it, Fridays and Wednesdays are usually the days where we see more people, especially related to audio and vMix. Omar Gadan said that you have to enable the C-F buses in the audio output section of the settings. So maybe that's your answer.
C through F buses.
This is our big multiplier, by the way. If you are watching the show and you think, well, I can't be on the panel, you can be in the chat, and I have the chat right here. So that's give that a shot. And also, Tommy Chance said, jump into after hours. A lot of times you'll jump into after hours. There's no conversations going on, but everyone's just sitting there. A lot of people will just you'll just see plates up there. If you start talking, people will turn on their windows and start talking to you about whatever you're dealing with.
And as we said a moment ago, askofficehours.global, not ask officehours.global/join will get you into the Mukana process. Next question.
Alex 4D Goldner's back from Zone 2, Northwest London. The Oscar nominations were announced this morning. The discussion will refer to some categories as being technical, as being less. What can be done for these creative people to get more respect?
Scott M. Davis, dive in.
So I don't think they get less respect. They get less TV time. I had a chance in the last several years to go into Hollywood and some other places to go be in the room with some of the people who've won those awards and people who receive the value of that work. There's nothing like being in the room with the guys who are actually defining the specs for like how to make your TV go into the right mode, to go into film mode versus soap opera mode to make sure you get the right film mode, and be sitting there and talk with somebody and go, and who are you? And the guy goes, oh, I'm Christopher Nolan. I directed The Dark Knight, and I had no idea who I was talking to. And I'm going, oh, Well, I'm an idiot.
Whoops.
And I'm like, oh, no, yeah, Bill, I felt like a complete fool because I had no idea who I was talking to. And I'm like, oh, it's so nice for you to spend the time here with us for this day. He goes, what do you mean spend the time with you here for this day? I go to every one of these things I can. There is a lot more respect for the technical awards than I think a lot of people understand. I will be transparent. I have been to the technical Emmys, not the technical Oscars. We are not great TV time. We don't speak well on TV. We get very clunky in front of a camera. We're not great sometimes when we try to accept things, and we're not good TV. We're not pretty. Alex, Lindsay, I apologize. Perhaps you are pretty. Some of the rest of us are not. I know you are gorgeous. But no, there is enormous amounts of respect for the technical Oscars, the technical Emmys in the world out there. If you want to see this, you're in London, Alex Gollner. There's actually a SEMPTY event going on in London. And I think you can go for free. You can go meet the people over at Sky who are doing a lot of work in the technical events. You can go meet those people. You can see the people who actually show up on TV, show up there quite a bit and going, I receive the reward of the hard work that these people do. And they show up. They have a lot of respect out there. It's just sometimes we're not great on TV.
Alex Lindsay.
Yeah, I think, the Oscars are for actors and directors and all the people that are in front of the camera. They included the technical folks at some point because people said, why aren't you including the technical people? And so I think that there's, but it's really designed for, it's really designed for them. And so that would be something that I would think through. Having the Oscar is useful from a career perspective of winning it if you win the technical thing. But I will say I know some friends that have a bunch of Oscars, and I went over to their house and they've got 4 or 5 of them, and they were just kind of like stuck in the. They were like. They're like just stuck in things like they're around. They're not. It wasn't the same level of, there wasn't like a shining light from above or anything else. There was just kind of like, yeah, I got one of those, and I didn't throw it away, but I didn't really do anything with it either. So anyway, yeah.
I'll just make one comment. You said they're for all those. I think they're for the advertisers. They want stars up on the screen because they're selling soap in the commercials between things. But Scott, you wanted to get back in.
Alex, I want to jump in on that. Yeah, a friend who has an Oscar, he has it in the bathroom. So you can go spend personal time with Oscar.
And don't let Alex in there because he'll 3DZ it. And then
so people just say, "I'm just going to go. I'm going to go look at your Oscar," and that's the.
He'll capture it, and then next thing you know, there'll be small Oscars everywhere. Next question.
Blaine Thomas in Antigua is asking, is there a budget option to the GVM TQ-LD Pro Teleprompter, which gives the same quality and sturdy build?
Jeffrey Powers.
So what he's talking about is this teleprompter right here. It's basically an Android tablet for a screen, an 18.5-inch screen on top of a teleprompter. And I can tell you right now that the easiest thing is there are other versions of the GVM that don't include that teleprompter, that Android tablet, that are going to be a lot cheaper because the tablet itself is going to take about $400 or $500 into that whole thing. If you want to try your hand at building one, there's actually a lot of easy ways to do that, and that is get one of the cheaper end teleprompters. They might have a smaller screen, but you can actually just rebuild it for a larger screen if you wanted to. You'll have to get the right type of glass that can do the two-way action, and that's not that difficult to get as well. But you could also look for any of these, if you're looking for 18.5 inches, you might want to look for anything that is 18.5 inch that does not have a built-in screen to it. What I do with my teleprompter, which is sitting right there, is I have a portable monitor attached to it, and that's attached to a computer, and that's how I run it. I can easily put on an Android tablet. I can easily put on an iPad and run the teleprompter that way as well.
Alex Lindsay.
I hate to break it to you, but the GVM is a budget teleprompter. Like what you're trying to replace with a budget teleprompter is a budget teleprompter. Welcome to the world of teleprompters, where most of the ones that are used in production are $2,000 and above, and they go up from there. So when you're looking at an $800 teleprompter and say how to make it cheaper, you can, but you're going to be pulling things out of it. You're not going to get the same quality or the same teleprompter for under $800. You're going to be removing some of the features because it's already a budget teleprompter.
And I will just note that it depends on what you're using for. If you're doing teleprompting in the field and traveling, then definitely invest on a more robust model. You'll be taking it in and setting it out and tearing it down. For the kind of things we do on a show here, most of us, I have an incredibly inexpensive teleprompter, a system. I think I spent maybe $150 for it, but it's mostly plastic, and I would never take it out in the field. It's great sitting on a desk every day for the same task, but I would not try to substitute this for a working field traveling teleprompter. Alex Lindsay, you want to get back in?
And it depends on what you want to do with it. So I was in Africa. The talent needed a teleprompter, and I made one out of a cardboard box. So what I did is there was a place that sold glass in town. I got a mirrored piece of glass. Not proper teleprompter glass, but good enough. It looked okay when we looked through it. It was pretty thin. I then took a cardboard box and set it down over the monitor and cut a line through it that was 45 degrees, and I slid that piece of glass through it. And so I had a monitor that we had laying around. I had a cardboard box on top of it, and I had a piece of glass slid in it. And you know what? Worked fine. So it was, you needed to be able to you needed to know how to flip the text, but you can build teleprompter. If you really want to get into saving money, you can order I think it's called teleprompterglass.com or whatever. You can order teleprompter glass from them and just build your own. And so if you have more time than money, think about that. If it's not moving around, I will say, as soon as you start to move teleprompters, you typically want to buy one. Although we had one that we could put in our backpack that was a 7-inch teleprompter that worked on a 7-inch monitor, and we printed the sides, and they screwed into the quarter 20s on the sides of the of the monitor, and you just slide a little bit teleprompter glass in, and we made it because it was really compact. So you can make ones, but generally when you start to want to do a moving one, you either have to spend a lot of time on it or just buy one. But if you're building one that's going to sit there forever, you could build one with a C-stand, with a maker pipe. Like all of those things are possible.
Jeff Powers, you want to come back in?
Yeah, I'm just going to show you my two teleprompters that I have in the studio, and the first one's a little bit hard to see, but that's this one right here. That's the one. That's the portable monitor. This one right here is actually attached to my Sony camera, and I took a Field World monitor and just I took off all the bits and pieces. You can get this off of Amazon fairly cheap. And then I took a little Field World and put that on as the reverse monitor. Whenever I'm up close and personal, like for instance this show, I might have it in front of me so I can see people or of course read off scripts.
One of my friends, a viewer, pinged me and reminded me of the Parrot brand too. I think I had one for my iPhone. It was very inexpensive. Again, it's not one of those things that'll last you forever, but it worked perfectly well. So there are a lot of companies on the low end that will get you the frosted glass, and you're just dealing with whether or not its mounting and the kind of camera you're using it on all kind of go together, and do you have to adapt it with rings and stuff like that. So thanks for the question, Blaine, excuse me. I didn't see that clearly. Next question.
Zach Stallsmith in Chautauqua, New York. I have a custom-built PC that I want to put in my rack. It's long and rectangular shape, so it will most likely go just on the bottom of the rack itself towards the back. Is there a way to secure this so it won't shake around when moving the rack?
Alexander Knight, what are your solutions for him?
Well, Zach, it's not too late. I would have actually bought a 19-inch rack mount case for the PC, so you can always gut that thing and put it in a different case. But if that thing does fit inside the rack, the first thing that comes to mind is just L brackets. Just screw a bunch of L brackets into it to secure it.
Jeffrey Powers.
Yeah, L brackets will work. You can also get yourself a shelf and put that on the shelf. You know, they have little L bracket shelves. There are some that'll actually give you L brackets in the front and L brackets in the back if your rack has a back rack whole unit that you can screw things into. So I've built a couple of these racks that way because of the fact that we needed to move stuff across rough terrain. And the only other thing is just build a more sturdy case, and you can also put on extra pieces that will stabilize in the back. Kind of like if you ever put a graphics card into a computer, they give you this little magnetic thing that you put onto the power supply, and it slides up and it holds your card in so it doesn't start to sag.
Don't forget, we are a non-for-profit organization, so if you find what we do helpful and you'd like to contribute to helping us with the effort, you can go to officehours.com/donate to help cover the cost of the overhead for the show. We'd very much appreciate it. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael is asking, has anyone integrated LumaFusion into their production workflow? Alex
Lindsay.
I play with LumaFusion, and I feel like it should. I should want to do it, but I keep on not finding my way all the way to finishing an entire project that I publish. I think it's a great app. I think it's probably the best app on the iPad to do it. I don't think it's a LumaFusion problem. I think that I'm just so used to. I think this gets into generational problems. I'm so used to using keyboards and mice and things with my editing that I have a hard time on an iPad. And I have the same problem with Resolve. I have the same problem with Final Cut. I get in there and I start to play with it, and then I end up just wanting to go back to my desktop. So, but I think it's a generational thing more than an app thing.
Jeffrey Powers?
Yeah, I used LumaFusion a couple times on my iPhone at CES because I was trying to make things a little bit easier. And I ended up switching because there were some things that were not very intuitive to do, and it got a little bit frustrating. So there is definitely a learning curve, as Alex suggested, but it was not something that I will see in production workflow anytime soon, unless they make some changes with the interface.
Next question.
Valhus in Austin, Texas. Insta360 Plus is a new cloud-based subscription service for $2 a month, $18 a year for 2 terabytes with a new way to share 360-degree content. Pros and cons.
Ooh, Alex Lindsay here does lots of 360 stuff. What do you think, Alex?
Meh.
And our next question.
It might take me $18 a month to save. Maybe. I mean, I guess there's some penny pusher who said, why don't we figure out a way to get a subscription service out of this? The cameras are great. Insta360 is making great cameras. I think the new Flow looks amazing. But $18 to share your 3D content with nobody, that no one can look at it. I don't get it.
That should be our next short. A 30-second question. Meh. Next, we're done.
Rejected.
Let's go to one. Let's legitimately
it's not
go.
Rejected. It's just kind of like,
yeah, I'm not enthused.
I think the technical term is nonplussed.
That's right. Next question.
Bobby Rafferty in Central Florida. Adobe has added new AI features to its video apps. Thoughts? Looks like there's a YouTube link there.
There is. Jeffrey Powers, you want to start us off?
Yeah, there's 4 things that they're talking about in here. The first one is probably the biggest, and that's their metadata, media intelligence, or media intelligence. Maybe this will be a spinoff of AI to have MI attached to it. But the idea is if you have your videos well cataloged, then what you can do is you can say, hey, I want somebody looking to the right, and it'll find a whole bunch of clips that you've done so you can bring them into your project work, which looks pretty impressive from there. The other things that they talked about was the captions. I'm not a big fan of their captioning service inside of Adobe products because they just basically miss on a lot of words, and I'm not the only one that's noticed that. When I do my videos, of course, I talk about my website, Geekazine, and that's not a common word. Every other LLM, including Vibe, which is a piece of software, open source software that I have on my computer, will always transcribe it there because it's using the regular LLMs. Whereas Adobe, I'm not sure what LLM they're using. So then every time it doesn't even know what my name is half the time. So the other 2 things is the improved on the caching. So you can be working on a project, and if your computer is not as beefy or you're going over the internet or something like that, it'll give you more proxy videos to work with, so you can then and be able to cache it onto your computer. And then, of course, HDR toning there, which some of the AI works. I still have to delve into that a little bit, but they're going the right direction. I'm really hoping. The biggest thing is the captions, especially if you can caption in different languages, because if I don't know the language, and I'm captioning it, and the English captions aren't working. I can't trust French or Italian, especially since I don't know the language.
Alex Lindsay.
Yeah, I haven't been able to dive into these features, and this was a movie instead of a list of things, so it's hard for me to kind of grok what they have there. I will say that in the places that I've used AI with Adobe, and primarily in Photoshop, I mean, it's the number one reason I'm still subscribed to Photoshop is the AI generation tools. So being able to do generative fill, being able to do generative removal, those things. I mean, I use them often enough to make it worth it. so that's the so I think that's and I think that I've talked. I think Guy was talking in a show earlier about the fact that you can open up InDesign and just select an image and just say, go get this. I'm looking for this. I'm looking for this. I'm looking for this, and fill it in. I think Adobe may be the kind of the sleeping giant here in generative AI, where they're moving a lot slower than everyone else, but it's integrated into all these big apps. It could be really interesting.
Scott M. Davis.
Clicking into what Alex said, yeah, they're great in generative fill. Pure generative AI, I have some real heartache with them. Ask them to generate a bald man, you always get a beard. It took me actually talking with an expert to actually figure out how to get them to generate a bald man without a beard. I actually had to generate the image and then go into Photoshop and select the area and go no beard.
Wow.
It's ridiculous.
From scratch, it's not very good. I would
Did
say
they just reflect follicles from up to down?
That's why I grew a beard.
Look, it's experience I don't have at any part of my life, so I got nothing. But in terms of their metadata, I have real heartburn with it. They're really behind. There are way better metadata handling tools than what they're doing now. Are they on the right track? Yes. There are companies out there that are doing such better work, and specifically with their own tools on metadata handling, it's a little embarrassing for Adobe. I won't name them here, but I mean, there are people who are doing way better things like find me a drone shot, find me a pan, find me something that looks like this. There's no training involved. It's just they're contextually aware out of the box. Adobe's really behind, and their metadata integration into their own tools is so bad that people are writing tools to get around it. So they have a long ways to go. It's a nice first step. And their captions are pants at best. I'm sorry, there are people who are doing live captions in 20 or 30 languages right now in real time that just, like, Adobe should be a little bit embarrassed by how far behind they are.
Next question.
This one's from Harshid Trivedi from Daytona Beach in Florida. I have a 55-inch Samsung Q6 LED TV, which I want to get off the ground and put it on a movable TV mounting solution. What are your recommendations in 2025? Maybe cart on wheels?
Alex Lindsay.
Yeah, a cart on wheels, I think, makes sense. Make sure that it's beefy enough. These, one of the big problems you get into these little carts, and even though 55 isn't that big of a deal, you can get a light one, and then you end up really, it's in a dangerous place. It doesn't have enough weight, doesn't have enough spread. This is similar to one that I've gotten. I couldn't find, for some reason, I couldn't search my own ordering from Amazon to find what I was looking at. Maybe I ordered it from somewhere else. But this is the one that we used this is very similar to the one we used at NAB. So you see a big base, and this is only $99. It's a big base. You've got wheels. This goes up high enough so that you can get it to where you want it. So these were the things that we kind of took into account. I think I might have bought a slightly more expensive version of this, but it works great. It's solid, and you can attach things to it. So we were attaching cameras and other things to them. So, but getting light ones I recommend against, because you've got a big piece of a big TV on it, and it's easy to bump it and have it tip over.
Jeffrey Powers, real quick.
And what's worse is they start to bend over time, so all of a sudden you get wobbles on your base. I built my own using an AV cart, some of the shelf backing for a closet shelving, a couple pieces of wood, and then of course the mount itself, and it is sturdy. And I've used that on the road a few times.
Our thanks go out to the producers, everybody who asked questions in the show today. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you enjoyed the questions. I know I did. The producers, that's what we call our audience, because literally you do produce the show by asking your questions and then voting those questions up and down so we know what you are most interested in hearing about. The next constituency we always are thankful for is our panelists who come in and donate their time and expertise to help answer your questions and hopefully move you farther along down the production road or the AI road or whatever road you want to ask questions about. And finally, to our amazing back-end crew, the quiet army of people all around the world who appear here every day and push buttons and move the show around. And I am just constantly impressed by not just the acumen, but the patience and the professionalism of these people all over the world who make this show happen. And it's a privilege to be a part of it. Our stats today, if you are looking at how much time it would have taken you to go find the experts and find the questions and do this live, you would have traveled 32,000 miles today. That's 51,000 kilometers and 253 million bananas for scale. After Hours will be ongoing all the time. And don't forget, we have various shows tonight. The Rundown with David Paskin happens later this evening. And also, we've had something going on all the time. So go to the website and check it out. Thanks for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.
Our new little slate's working pretty well. Peter Belbin's doing that.
Nice. Yeah. Thank you, Peter. That is really good to have it in where it is now.
It's easier to see it. Yeah. Yesterday we were able to kind of adjust the mic, going, "Hey, you got to move your mic up, your mic, So I think being able to have a heads-up display is kind of fun.
I love the meters. The only thing I was concerned about is somebody dropped something through a table above my head during the show, so I'm having to call my kids to make sure everybody was okay, and the cat knocked something through a table during the show.
Oh no!
So it's like, "Are you okay?" It's like, it was just the cat.
This is the cat. Oh, all right. See you, everybody.
Bye-bye.
See ya.